Watchers, and good morning from sunny Colorado Springs. We have 20 degrees outside, and that's fantastic after this freezing period over the last days. So it really feels spring. So we are on day 3 of a very full days of top-level presentations, top-level talks, discussions, and networking, of course. And today, my wonderful co-host is again Laura Todd, one of our senior advisors. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Torsten. As you say, much more sun available than last week when we had snow. So what can we say? The weather changes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And how are you?
I'm doing fine. Let's kick off the day with my space joke. So why are people doing party? Why don't do people parties on moon?
I don't know, Torsten.
No, shall I tell you? There's no atmosphere, but we have the atmosphere here, so that's pretty good. So, yesterday was again a very interesting day with a number of discussions we had. We heard Josef Aschbacher, Dr. Josef Aschbacher, the DG of ESA, talking about the 2040 strategy of ESA. We will have a deep dive. Laura will have a deep dive with him tomorrow on that. That will be very interesting to unfold what was said. But what else was on your radar yesterday? I think the NATO thing was pretty good.
I think the NATO panel was incredibly interesting, much more open than maybe people thought. And if you remember at the start of the week, I talked about why is space bigger than borders? And that was really the emphasis we saw yesterday from NATO.
Even General Saltzman used it this morning, and we will talk about his speech in a second.
I feel like he was listening in our conversation. So
absolutely.
No, it was really positive.
SpaceWatch rules.
Talking about how we need to collaborate more, normalize space operations, have that multi-dimensionality, and really how to better integrate capabilities, innovations, technologies. If they come from the commercial sector, so what? It's about delivering an end user scenario. And that seemed to me that they really want to push that, how to make the processes more agile and quick, and to be able to bring all those different capabilities that are available into a working solution. So that was really positive, I felt, yesterday.
So we get the feeling that things are moving at the moment with speed and in the right direction. And I think that's convincing in this political climate that we're in. And greetings to Germany this morning, I have to say it. So I'm so happy to see that the coalition is standing and we will have a government, so hooray. As we speak, I mentioned it a second ago, General Saltzman, the head of the US Space Force, is talking, and besides that he mentioned that at the moment 15 countries are capable of space launches and 88 nations have assets in space. He also talked about, again, cooperation is essential. He pointed out to the recently released DoD International Space Cooperation Strategy. So there's a document that will talk about it. And the 3 goals he mentioned just a second ago was empowering partners. How cool is that? As force multipliers. Interoperabilities and information sharing, a huge thing in the military domain, as we know. And in this context, he mentioned also Norway, and that's just a spoiler. For a second, in a second, we will have our guest from Norway here on stage. And the last point, I can't read it here. Oh, there's this full spectrum integration he mentioned, and that they're building the One Space team. Later today, we have a briefing with General Saltzman, not with, so we don't brief him, so except you.
Would you like to try?
By him and our Air Marshal Godfrey, so we will report on that. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Laura's guest for this morning, and as a good friend of SpaceWatch.Global, Christian Hauglie-Hanssen, the Director General of the Norwegian Space Agency, who I'm asking now to come on stage. Christian.
Thank you very much, Torsten.
So welcome, Christian.
Good morning, Laura.
Good morning. First of all, congratulations on the award you received yesterday from the IAF for distinguished service, as I understand it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Very good. And obviously distinguished service in what you're doing with Norwegian Space Agency. So would you like to give us an update then on what's happening in Norway?
Yes, I would, and thank you very much for inviting me on the show. It's fun to be here because so many things are happening. But I thought that I would just make a short summary of the key takeaways in Norway, and they really relate to a lot of things that we're discussing here. You mentioned the presentation of General Salzman, and this with international partnership is at the very fundamental to Norway. We've been a member of European Space Agencies in 1987. We're heavily invested in the EU space programs. And this is really the basis, the foundation for our activities, but there's more. We are seeing a development on the need for more bilateral cooperation. And the geopolitical environment is really feeding into this. How can we establish strategic relationships in order to exploit our own capacity and feeding that into a more, for the common good and empowering both participants to this. So that is really at the heart of this. That plays into what we're doing nationally in order to be a relevant player. So national infrastructure is at the top of our agenda. Obviously, the Arctic Satellite Broadband Mission launched last year in August with the two HEO satellites now orbiting over the poles to provide broadband coverage there. This is an international cooperation with Space Norway, a Norwegian government-owned company, and the US Space Force and Viasat, in order to provide both civil and military capacity in the high north. We are working on what we call the Arctic Surveillance Program. This is also a civil-military cooperating. I'm chairing this together with the Armed Forces. We have representatives from the National Defense Research Lab and also the Coastal Administration. So we are serving both the civil and military domain there. The last point is, of course, Andøya Spaceport. We had this wonderful trial launch 2 weeks ago. The cooperation with ISAR Aerospace of Germany in Munich, or Ottobrunn, and Andøya Spaceport, who's developing the actual launch services. This is an incredibly important milestone. It did not succeed totally, but they did gather a lot of information. And the thing is that to provide more launch capability in Europe is essential in terms of commercialization and getting satellites on orbit, because if they're sitting on the shelf, it doesn't work so much. So that takes care of that part. And then we have services development. We're doing this for a reason. We want to have real and tangible services for the benefit of society. And finally, policy development. This is not happening in a vacuum. We're working with the European Space Policy Institute and also our national policy institutes. So this sort of summarizes the 5 points that I think carries weight in how we develop our national space activities and how we're cooperating internationally.
I think they're all excellent points, and they really highlight what we're seeing as a message about we've got these capabilities. It's not about it being military or civil or commercial. It's what's the end output of that, and you should be able to use it across multiple different markets. I also appreciate with what you said with regarding the launch. I was very happy when I saw how it was communicated afterwards. Like you say, it didn't get into space, but it was the first step, and it was an iterative, more agile approach to doing it. And I thought the communication reflected that really well, rather than the old-fashioned of, oh, it didn't launch completely, so it was a failure. It was not a failure. For me, it was a success. So I'm really glad to hear you say that.
And we need to acknowledge that this is how it works. It is really hard. So we are cheering for everyone who wants to develop this commercially to S-Range, what they're doing in Sweden, what they're doing at Saxavord in the UK, and all the developers with Orbex and RFA and ISAR Aerospace and all those things. It's really at the core of getting European autonomy. Yeah,
no, it's the right direction. So what are your key takeaways then that you've seen from Space Symposium so far?
Well, our ambition for coming here was, of course, having meetings. We've had meetings with NOAA, we are cooperating. NASA, of course, to get a sense of how they feel they are doing now. They're waiting for the hearing today of Jared Isaacman. Of course, this is paving the way for how they're going to develop in the future. and also bilateral meetings. But the takeaway, I think, is we were wondering with the political situation globally, but also in the US, how will this be communicated? I think General Salzman was very frank about this, and I went to a breakfast this morning where we are really talking about how are we going to develop this. We need to iron out our differences, but we also need to stay the course. Being great partners and really aiming for working together internationally. So I think this was an uplift in the ongoing discussion internationally now.
And so that ties in nicely also with just a final question, and then I'll let you get on and continue being excellent for Norway. With regards to the ESA strategy, so Joseph Aschbacher presented that yesterday. And again, coming back to your way of working that you're doing in Norway, like leading by example in terms of best practice. So what did you think of that in terms of the strategy and how it aligns with the Norwegian vision and what you're doing internationally as well?
Yeah. Being part of the head of, or the ESA Council as head of the delegation from Norway, I've been heavily invested in the discussions on the 2040 strategy. So there are two things. The 2040 strategy, as Joseph Aschbacher presented yesterday, really puts the long view of what Europe will try to achieve through the tech development, program development that is the assignment of ESA. At the same time, we have the shorter vision towards the ministerial conference, the CM25, now the end of November. It is important because we need to put together substantial and sufficient funding for getting these programs moving forward. He's pointing to also, staying the course on many of the wonderful science programs. He mentioned, the Euclid program, the cooperation on the James Webb, and those things. Launcher programs are important. Civil security is an important element for him, and we're discussing now how can ESA involve in order to serve that also as a function. And of course the uncertainty tied to, for instance, the exploration programs. This is sort of in play, but again, we need to stay the course.
Well, thank you so much. It really has been a pleasure talking with you this morning. I hope the Space Watchers at home enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and have a good rest of the symposium.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Christian.
I'm coming back in. Thank you, Christian, for this very, very interesting conversation.
Yeah. So Torsten, tell us, what are you looking forward for today?
Glasses. So, today, we will yesterday, I think, before talking about...
We can talk
there
about
were
yesterday.
a few things I would like to mention about yesterday.
Okay.
Astroscale made a big splash announcement yesterday morning with the first refueling mission in GEO in space. Very, 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 very big thing. Then iSpace and Redwire made an announcement for cooperation. We had Tom Segert from BST here in our show, and Dr. Anke Pagels-Kerb from DLR. That was absolutely fantastic, and Tom's and Anke's videos are online already. So, talking about today, we mentioned Salzman and Godfrey, who are on, who will be in the press briefing later on. There's in parallel in the Cheyenne Mountain Resource the game changer track of Nova Space going on. We have USPERS Director General Rodrigo da Costa on stage later on. We will see talks about space superiority and VLEO. VLEO in the next 5 years is the new LEO. Maybe. I mean, I'm an engineer and I know that there are laws of physics, but let's see how they figure that out. And there is the innovation pitch competition. And I think you will attend it. What are your hopes on that?
I will definitely be attending, as innovation is absolutely key, and especially with what we've heard in the messaging, it sounds like it's going to be even more relevant. So I will definitely give the viewers a feedback on that tomorrow.
Okay, wonderful. That's it from us here live on the DLR stage at the 40th Space Symposium. We say goodbye, have a wonderful evening in Europe and Germany, and with that, Space Watch out.